Committee will be in order. For what purpose does the gentleman from Utah, Mr. Bishop, rise?
I ask unanimous consent to speak for 1 minute.
Gentleman's recognized.
Fellow members of the House, if you would turn your attention to the back rail, there you will see the pages who have served us for this past semester. These Thank you. You're supposed to applaud after I speak.
The committee will be in order.
These are
the gentleman from Utah deserves to be heard. Gentleman from Utah.
Thank you. These are the kids who still get up in the middle of the night at times where I thought was only a rumor so they can go to an accredited high school and Library of Congress and complete a full day of studies before they're here at 10 o'clock to serve us. They have learned the process of government by watching us, which is a scary thought. But in the process of doing that, they have gained a healthy respect for our system, and they have learned lessons that they will take with them and made friendships they will take with them through the rest of their lives, and they have served this body well. Mr. Speaker, I wish to yield. Mr. Chairman, I wish to yield time to Mr. Kildee of Michigan. Oh, there you are. Wish to yield time to Mr. Kildee of Michigan.
Gentleman from Michigan is recognized.
I thank the gentleman for yielding. Mr. Speaker, I'd like to take this opportunity to express my personal gratitude.
Gentleman will suspend. The committee will be in order. The gentleman from Michigan deserves to be heard, just as the gentleman from Utah deserves to be heard, maybe even more so. Gentleman from Michigan is recognized.
I'd like a record roll call on that. Mr. Speaker, I'd like to take this opportunity to express my personal gratitude to all the pages for what they have done to serve this House of Representatives. I've attached a list of the pages and their names and ask that the record will be made part of the congressional record.
The gentleman will have to make that request in the full House.
I will do that. These groups of young people who come from all across the nation represent what is good about our country. To become a page, Mr. Speaker, these young people have proven themselves to be academically qualified. They have ventured away from the security of their homes and families to spend time in an unfamiliar city. Through this experience, they have witnessed a new culture, made new friends, and learned the details of how our government operates. As we all know, the job of a congressional page is not an easy one. Along with being away from home, the pages must possess the maturity to balance competing demands for their time and their energy. In addition, they must have the dedication to work long hours and the ability to interact with people at a personal level. At the same time, they face a challenging academic schedule of classes in the House Page School. You pages have witnessed the House debate issues of war and peace, hunger and poverty, justice and civil rights. You have lived through history. You have seen Congress at moments of greatness, and you have seen Congress with its frailties. You have witnessed the workings of an institution that has endured well over 200 years. No one has seen Congress and members of Congress as close up as have you. And I am sure that you will consider your time spent in Washington, D.C. to be one of the most valuable and exciting experiences of your lives. And with this experience, you will all move ahead to lead successful and productive lives. And before yielding, Mr. Speaker, I would like to thank the members of the House Page Board who provide such service to this body. Congressman Rob Bishop, not only a member of the board, but a dear friend. Diana DeGette, also a very good friend. And my good friend on the other side of the aisle, Virginia Fox. I don't think we've ever had a disagreement in the Page Board. we reach unanimity there. The Clerk of the House, Karen Haas, the Sergeant-at-Arms, Bill Livingood, and Mrs. Lynn Silversmith Klein. I want to thank them for their service on the House page board, and I thank all our departing pages. And yield back.
Gentleman from Utah is recognized.
And I'd like to yield a few seconds to the gentlelady from North Carolina, who's also a member of the page board.
Gentlewoman from North Carolina is recognized.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. I simply want to add my congratulations to the pages and my great thanks to them for their service to us. They really do a tremendous amount to help this House work effectively. And I also want to say a thank you to the page coordinators, Ms. Keating and Ms. Sampson, who are with them. Who help facilitate their activities here. They also do a tremendous job and work long hours, and I'm very grateful to them.
Mr. Chairman, once again, we thank the pages who will be having their graduation ceremony tomorrow and then leaving us. We wish you very well in your further endeavors. Thank you very much.
Time of the gentleman's expired. Without objection, 2-minute voting will continue. The unfinished business is a request for a recorded vote on the amendment offered by the gentleman from Iowa, Mr. King, on which further proceedings were postponed and on which the noes prevailed by voice vote. Clerk will redesignate the amendment.
Amendment offered by Mr. King of Iowa.
A recorded vote has been requested. Those in support of the request for a recorded vote will rise and be counted, evidently a sufficient number. A recorded vote is ordered. Members will record their vote by electronic device. This is the beginning of a series of 2-minute votes.
The House takes a break from the voting to salute their pages who are graduating from this term. They served the House. They have served the House since 1827, since the 20th Congress, according to the page website. And they are all juniors in high school who serve the House on a term in the summer, the fall, and also in the spring. Back to voting on the House, one of 12 amendment votes to the fiscal year 2012 Homeland Security Spending Bill, $42 billion bill. This amendment by Steve King of Iowa, which would prohibit the use of funds to be used for over 100 Acorn-affiliated and other community organizations. 2-minute vote.
the yeas.
Mr. Higgins. Off aye on no from Mr. Higgins. Mr. Garrett of New Jersey. Mr. Garrett of New Jersey votes aye.
On this vote, the yeas are 251, the nays 168, one voting present. The amendment is agreed to. The chair wishes to remind members this is a series of 2-minute votes. The unfinished business is a request for recorded vote on amendment, the amendment offered by the gentleman from Minnesota, Mr. Kravak, on which further proceedings were postponed and on which the ayes prevailed by voice vote. Clerk will redesignate the amendment.
Amendment offered by Mr. Kravak of Minnesota.
Recorded vote's been requested. Those in support of the request for recorded vote will rise and be counted. Evidently a sufficient number. Having arisen, a recorded vote is ordered. Members will record their vote by electronic devices. A 2-minute vote.
And it's one of 12 amendment votes to the fiscal year 2012 Homeland Security Spending Bill. This one by Chip Kravak of Minnesota would prohibit the use of funds in the bill used in contravention of section of the Immigration and Nationality Act. And again, it's one of 12 amendment votes. We expect a debate on a motion to recommit and final passage coming up.
All time having expired on this vote, the yeas are 288, nays are 131, and the amendment is agreed to. The unfinished business is the request for a recorded vote on amendment number 1, offered by the gentleman from Michigan, Mr. Amash, on which further proceedings were postponed, and on which the noes prevailed by voice vote. Clerk will redesignate the amendment.
Amendment 1 offered by Mr. Amash of Michigan.
Recorded votes been requested. Those in support of recorded vote will rise and be counted. Evidently a sufficient number. Having arisen, a recorded vote is ordered. Members will record their votes by electronic device. Again, a 2-minute vote.
One of several amendments proposed by Representative Amash of Michigan, this one would prohibit the use of funds to purchase any new advanced imaging technology machines, the full body scanners that you see at airports. This is one of 12 amendment votes. 8 more will follow after this to the Homeland Security Spending Bill. Tomorrow in the House, while they come in early at 9 o'clock Eastern on a Friday morning, and expect to hear a lot about Libya tomorrow. House Speaker John Boehner has just unveiled the resolution, the Republican resolution on Libya, a resolution that, according to the press release, would establish that the President has not asked for congressional authorization, that would reassert Congress's constitutional role on funding, would require the President to provide within 14 days information on the mission that should have been provided from the start. This is John Boehner's Republican resolution. And 4, it would reaffirm the vote taken last week that says there should be no troops on the ground. That, according to the press release that came with the resolution on Libya that will be debated on in the House tomorrow. The Associated Press, writing about the upcoming debate, says that facing a balance of power showdown and frustration among rank-and-file lawmakers, the GOP leadership pursued an alternative to anti-war Representative Dennis Kucinich's proposal to end U.S. involvement in the conflict, according to Republican lawmakers. So a vote on the issue postponed Wednesday and will likely happen tomorrow in the House. Again, they gavel in at 9 a.m. Eastern.
All time having expired on this vote, the yeas are 130, the nay...
Waters. Ms. Waters votes no.
All time having expired. Yeas are 127, the noes are 295. The amendment is not agreed to. The unfinished business is the request for a recorded vote on amendment number 2 offered by the gentleman from Michigan, Mr. Amash, on which further proceedings were postponed, on which the yeas prevailed by voice vote. Clerk will redesignate the amendment.
Amendment 2 offered by Mr. Amash of Michigan.
Recorded vote has been requested. Those in support of the request for a recorded vote will rise and be counted. Evidently a sufficient number having arisen, recorded votes ordered. Members will record their vote by electronic device. This is a 2-minute vote.
Well, Congressman Amash's first amendment, the one just voted on, fell. That would have prohibited the use of funds to buy any new advanced imaging machines, the full-body scanners. This amendment proposes to prohibit the use of funds to operate or maintain existing advanced imaging technology machines, such as full-body scanners or primary screening devices. It's another 2-minute vote, and following this, 7 more amendments to the Homeland Security bill.
time having...
Ms. Capter.
Don't let it happen again.
Ms. Capter votes no.
Mr. Higgins, this is twice for you, Mr. Higgins. Mr. Higgins, this is twice for you. Can't let it happen again. Go ahead.
Mr. Higgins. Off aye on no for Mr. Higgins. Ms. Hochul. Off aye on no for Ms. Hochul.
All time having expired on this vote, the yeas are 123, the nays are 300, and the amendment is not agreed to. The unfinished business is the request for a recorded vote on amendment number 3, offered by the gentleman from Michigan, Mr. Amash, on which further proceedings were postponed, on which the ayes prevailed by voice vote. Clerk will redesignate the amendment.
Offered by Mr. Amash of Michigan.
Recorded vote's been requested. Those who support the request for a recorded vote will rise and be counted, having only a sufficient number. The members will record their vote by electronic device. Once again, this is a 2-minute vote.
The House is halfway through a series of amendment votes on the fiscal year 2012 spending bill for Homeland Security. $42 billion is the dollar figure for this budget year. That's 3% less than this year, and $42 billion for fiscal year 2012. It is 6% less than requested by President Obama. The administration, however, supports the bill. This is the 6th of 12 amendment votes. This one, another one by Justin Amash of Michigan. This amendment would prohibit the use of funds to be used for any action by a political appointee overruling a civil service employee's decision while complying with or implementing policies in accordance with the Freedom of Information Act. It's another 2-minute vote. Following this series of votes, we expect the House to take up a motion to recommit and then final passage on Homeland Security. And following all that, they will resume work on the Military Construction and Veterans Programs Bill. They voice voted the rule for that earlier today.
All time having expired on this vote, the yeas are 257, the nays are 164. The amendment is agreed to. The unfinished business is a request for a recorded vote on amendment 4. The amendment is agreed to. The unfinished business is a request for a recorded vote on amendment number 1 offered by the gentleman from Indiana, Mr. Rokita, on which further proceedings were postponed and on which the noes prevailed by voice vote. Clerk will redesignate the amendment.
Amendment 1 offered by Mr. Rokita of Indiana.
Recorded vote's been requested. Those in support of the request for recorded vote will rise. Evidently a sufficient number. Recorded vote is ordered. Members will record their vote by electronic device. This again is a 2-minute vote.
And this amendment to the Homeland Security spending bill for 2012 would implement a 10% reduction across the board to all DHS agencies except for Customs and Border Protection and Immigration and Customs Enforcement. The amendment sponsored Todd Rokita of Indiana, Republican, and a freshman member of the U.S. House. All House freshmen today had the opportunity to meet with Treasury Secretary Tim Geithner, who was up on Capitol Hill to talk about the raising of the debt limit. He has said that August 2nd is the date in which the Treasury Department will run out of money to manage the government debt. And Tuesday, the House rejected a bill that would have raised the federal debt limit without additional spending cuts. We heard a bit from House Republicans earlier, and the upcoming votes are going to give you a chance to hear some of their comments following a meeting with Secretary Geithner.
On this vote, the yeas are 110, the nays 312. The amendment is not agreed to. The unfinished business, a request for recorded vote on amendment number 2, offered by the gentleman from Indiana, Mr. Rokita, on which further proceedings were postponed and on which the noes prevailed by voice vote. Clerk will redesignate the amendment.
Amendment number 2, offered by Mr. Rokita of Indiana.
Recorded vote's been requested. Those in support of taking this by recorded vote will rise. Evidently a sufficient number having arisen. The recorded vote is ordered. Members will record their vote by electronic device. This again is a 2-minute vote.
And this amendment would prohibit the use of funds to implement the TSA administrator's recent decision allowing limited collective bargaining for TSA officers. The amendment sponsor, Todd Rokita of Indiana. 4 more amendment votes to go, and following that, debate on a Democratic motion to recommit and final passage ahead. And later the House will begin consideration, general debate, on the spending bill for 2012 for military construction and veterans programs.
All time having expired on this vote, the yeas are 218, the nays 205. The amendment is agreed to. The unfinished business, the request for recorded vote on amendment number 42, printed in the congressional record, offered by the gentleman from Oklahoma, Mr. Cole, on which further proceedings were postponed, and on which the noes prevailed by voice vote. Clerk will redesignate the amendment.
Amendment number 42, printed in the congressional record, offered by Mr. Cole of Oklahoma.
Recorded vote's been requested. Those in favor of taking this by recorded vote will rise. Evidently a sufficient number. Recorded vote is ordered. Members will record their vote by electronic device. A 2-minute vote.
Tom Cole of Oklahoma proposing an amendment which would prohibit the use of funds in the Homeland Security spending bill to implement any rule, regulation, or executive order regarding the disclosure of political contributions. 3 more 2-minute votes will follow, amendment votes, and then debate on a motion to recommit, a last chance to change the bill before a vote on final passage. And still to come in the House, they will get back to work or begin general debate on the spending bill for military construction and Veterans Affairs.
All time having expired on this vote, the yeas are 252, the nays are 170. The amendment is agreed to. The unfinished business is the request for recorded vote on the amendment offered by the gentleman from Texas, Mr. Gomert, on which further proceedings were postponed and on which the noes prevailed by voice vote. Clerk will redesignate the amendment.
Amendment offered by Mr. Gomert of Texas.
Recorded vote's been requested. Those in support of taking this by recorded vote will rise. Evidently a sufficient number. Having arisen, a recorded vote is ordered. This is a 2-minute vote.
An amendment by Representative Louis Gomert of Texas. This one would prohibit the Department of Homeland Security from signing new leases for office space or signing new contracts for construction in the District of Columbia. 2-minute vote, and 2 more amendments will follow this. Then a debate on the motion to recommit and final passage vote still to come in the House. Earlier today, former Massachusetts Governor Mitt Romney announced he's running for president for the Republican ticket, and you can take a look at that event. We'll show it to you later in our program schedule. It's available now also in our video library at cspan.org.
All time having expired on this vote, the yeas are 199, the nays are 224. The amendment is not agreed to. The unfinished business request for recorded vote on the amendment offered by the gentleman from Florida, Mr. Micah, on which further proceedings are postponed, on which the noes prevail by voice vote. Clerk will redesignate the amendment.
Amendment offered by Mr. Micah of Florida.
Recorded votes been requested. Those in support of taking this vote by recorded vote will rise. Evidently, a sufficient number having arisen, recorded vote is ordered. Members will record their vote by electronic device. This is a 2-minute vote.
With final passage still ahead, this is the second to last amendment vote to the fiscal year 2012 spending bill for Homeland Security, $42 billion bill. And this amendment by John Micah of Florida, who is the chairman of the Transportation and Infrastructure Subcommittee of the House Oversight Committee. This particular amendment would cut the spending level, the appropriation for aviation security screeners by 10%. And this is a 2-minute vote. One more amendment coming up.
Vote. The yeas are 219.
Ms. Schakowsky.
Have all members cast their votes?
Ms. Schakowsky votes no.
All time having expired. On this vote, the yeas are 219, the nays are 204, and the amendment is agreed to. The Chair wishes to inform members that this is the last of the series of 2-minute votes. The unfinished business is a request for recorded vote on amendment number 23, printed in the congressional record, offered by the gentleman from Colorado, Mr. Polis, on which further proceedings were postponed, on which the noes prevailed by voice vote. Clerk will redesignate the amendment.
Amendment number 23, printed in the congressional record, offered by Mr. Polis of Colorado.
Recorded vote has been requested. Those in support of the request for recorded vote will rise. Evidently, a sufficient number having arisen. A recorded vote is ordered. Those in favor will vote aye. Those opposed will vote no. Members will record their vote by electronic device. This is the final 2-minute vote.
This final 2-minute vote on an amendment proposed by Democrat Jared Polis of Colorado would prohibit use of the funds to carry out a program authorizing immigration enforcement agreements between Immigration and Customs Enforcement and local law enforcement. 2-minute vote. Following this, a motion to recommit, a debate on that, and final passage ahead. And when the House wraps up work on the Homeland Security spending bill, we expect them to move on to the next bill, a bill that they voice-voted approval of the rule earlier, the Military Construction Veterans Programs Bill for 2012.
.213, the amendment is not agreed to. 313. And the amendment is not agreed to. Committee will be in order. The committee will be in order. The clerk will read the last 2 lines.
This act may be cited as the Department of Homeland Security Appropriations Act 2012.
For what purpose does the gentleman from Alabama, the chairman of the subcommittee, rise?
Mr. Chairman, I move that the committee do now rise and report the bill back to the House with sundry amendments and the recommendation that the amendments be agreed to and that the bill as amended do pass.
Question is on the motion. The gentleman from Alabama. Those in favor will say aye. Those opposed, no. The ayes have it. Accordingly, the committee rises.
Okay, this one's for you.
Chairman.
Speaker, the Committee of the Whole House and the State of the Union having got under consideration H.R. 2017 directs me to report the same back to the House with sundry amendments, with a recommendation that the amendments be agreed to and that the bill be amended and do pass.
The Chair of the Committee of the Whole House on the State of the Union reports that the committee has had under consideration the bill H.R. 2017 and reports the bill back to the House with sundry amendments adopted in the Committee of the Whole, with a recommendation that the amendments be adopted and the bill as amended do pass. Under House Resolution 287, the previous question is ordered. Is a separate vote demanded on any amendment reported from the Committee of the Whole? If not, the Chair will put them in gross. The question is on the adoption of the amendments. Those in favor, please say aye. Those opposed, please say no. The ayes have it. The amendments are adopted. The question is on engrossment and third reading of the bill. Those in favor, please say aye. Aye. And those opposed, please say no. The ayes have it. Third reading.
A bill making appropriations for the Department of Homeland Security for the fiscal year ending September 30th, 2012, and for other purposes.
Thank you. For what purpose does the gentleman from New York rise?
Mr. Speaker, I have a motion to recommit at the desk.
Is the gentleman opposed to the bill?
In its current form, I am.
The gentleman qualifies. The clerk will report the motion.
Mr. Bishop of New York moves to recommit the bill, H.R. 2017, to the Committee on Appropriations with instructions to report the same back to the House forthwith with the following amendment. Page 45, line 8, after the dollar amount, insert increased by $75 million. Page 64, lines 2 and 4, after each of the dollar amounts, insert reduced by $75 million.
For what purpose? The gentleman from New York is recognized for 5 minutes.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. Mr. Speaker, I rise in support of this final amendment, the Bishop-Holt motion to recommit, in order to increase funding for grants for transportation security and counterterrorism. Intelligence seized from Osama bin Laden's compound indicates that al-Qaeda was targeting America's railroads on the 10th anniversary of the 9/11 attacks. Earlier in 2009, the FBI disrupted a plot to blow up trains in New York City and in Washington, D.C. The 9/11 Commission placed some of the blame for the intelligence breakdown before the 9/11 attacks on a failure of imagination. But today we don't have to imagine the damage a terrorist could do on a rush-hour commuter train. That is evident from the tragedies in Madrid, London, and Mumbai. An even more deadly attack could occur on a train carrying hazardous chemicals through a major city, including trains that pass regularly only a stone's throw from the U.S. Capitol. While airline security upgrades over the past 10 years can help prevent another 9/11, we still face an evolving threat to multiple modes of transportation. In fact, trips by rail exceed air travel by 18 times, yet air travel receives over 200 times more federal security funding per passenger than rail.
Is not in order. The gentleman is correct. The House is not in order. Please take your conversations off the floor. The House will come to order. The gentleman may continue.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. Still, the bill before us today makes deep cuts to rail security. It provides no specific funding for transit, rail, or bus security grants in 2012. Instead, it rolls 9 grant programs together to compete for funding that has already been cut 55%. That's not a failure of imagination. That's a dereliction of duty. In response, the Bishop-Holt amendment would increase funding for grants for transportation security and counterterrorism by $75 million, fully offset with a reduction in funding for the National Bio and Agro Defense Facility, otherwise known as NBAF. While the DHS insists that a new billion-dollar animal disease research lab in the heart both of Cattle Country and Tornado Alley is completely safe, both the GAO and the National Academy of Sciences have found many faults in safety and in cost overruns. In fact, most of us agree with the National Academy of Sciences that the risk of a release of foot and mouth disease in America's heartland must be better addressed before DHS proceeds with construction. We have much higher Homeland Security priorities than beginning a new billion-dollar facility that will replicate many of the existing functions already conducted at our federal labs. 14 million Americans ride mass transit every day in our nation's urban areas, with millions more riding commuter or passenger rail each year. If we understand the clear threat to these passengers and accept that efforts to protect them are underfunded, we must do more to keep them safe. Mr. Speaker, I urge my colleagues to make the right choice and support this final amendment to increase funding for grants for transportation security and terrorism, and I yield the balance of our time to the gentleman from New Jersey, Mr. Holt.
The gentleman from New Jersey is recognized.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. This proposed amendment has a simple purpose: to prevent the reckless cuts to passenger rail security. Mr. Speaker, you probably read that at the time the al-Qaeda leader bin Laden was killed, he was planning attacks on U.S. passenger rail systems. Even as we debate this bill, our intelligence and law enforcement communities are running to ground leads about these and other potential terrorist plots. This discovery underscores the need to sustain, not to cut, transit security funding. Following the terrible events of 2001, our nation took unprecedented steps to secure our nation's airlines, appropriately so. However, transit security grant programs remain badly underfunded. We need these funds to field canine teams, install surveillance cameras, security fencing, provide resources for incident response training, and a host of other mission-critical activities that are required to help secure our trains and buses. Transit provides 18 times as many passenger trips as aviation, but receives 12 times less security funding. In other words, aviation security receives 215 times as much federal funding per passenger as land transit. We have to do much, much better because the threat is real. In 2004, terrorist cells conducted successful and deadly bombings in Spain. The next year in the UK, in India, in Belarus, hundreds of people killed, thousands of people wounded. Let's not put off the necessary rail security steps until after the tragedy here. Let's thwart bin Laden's plans.
Does the gentleman yield back?
I yield back my time with a request in support for this amendment.
I urge support of this amendment. I yield back the balance of our time.
Gentleman from New York yields back. For what purpose does the gentleman from Alabama seek recognition?
Mr. Speaker, I rise in opposition to the gentleman's motion.
The gentleman is recognized for 5 minutes.
Okay, Mr. Speaker, this bill is about priorities. Fiscal discipline priorities as our nation grapples with a genuine budget crisis, and security priorities in the aftermath of Osama bin Laden's death, and as we approach the 10th anniversary of the 9/11 attacks. This bill includes robust spending reductions on bureaucracy and on programs that are not producing, cutting waste, reducing spending, and
will suspend. The House is not in order. The House will please come to order. Take your conversations off the floor, please. The gentleman will continue.
This bill includes robust spending reductions on bureaucracy and on programs that are not producing, cutting waste, reducing spending, and instilling genuine budget discipline. In addition, this bill puts money where it matters: frontline operations, intelligence, counterterrorism, and disaster relief. Mr. Speaker, the gentleman's motion is simply a political ploy at the end of an open process on a bill that delivers the nation's the spending restraints and robust security that our nation needs. And furthermore, under Speaker Boehner's leadership, as executed by Chairman Dreyer and Chairman Rogers, we have just completed 2 days of floor debate under a completely open rule. It is the most open possible debate before the People's House. We have repeatedly addressed the issues that the gentleman is raising with this motion and thoroughly debated the merits and the shortcoming of his points. In short, it is time to vote, Mr. Speaker. It's time to deliver physical discipline, and it's time to deliver robust security. The American people are demanding no less. I yield back.
The gentleman yields back. Without objection, the previous question is ordered on the motion to recommit. The question is on the motion to recommit. Those in favor, please say aye. Aye. And those opposed, please say no. No. The noes have it.
Mr. Speaker, on that I request a recorded vote.
The gentleman asked for a recorded vote. A recorded vote is requested. Those favoring a recorded vote will rise. A sufficient number having arisen, a recorded vote is ordered. Members will record their votes by electronic device. Pursuant to Clause 9 of Rule 20, the Chair will reduce to 5 minutes the minimum time for any electronic vote on the question of passage. This is a 15-minute vote.
Robert Adeholt of Alabama is the chairman of the Appropriations Subcommittee on Homeland Security. He's been managing debate on the $42 billion fiscal year spending bill for that department for fiscal year 2012 and got the last word in there, fending off the argument by Tim Bishop of New York and Rush Holt of New Jersey for more additional funding for rail transportation security in the 2012 spending bill for the Department of Homeland Security. So a vote here, 15 minutes, on the motion to recommit. Final passage vote is next on the House floor. Earlier today at the Capitol, Treasury Secretary Tim Geithner met with House freshmen. He met privately today to talk about the standoff over boosting the debt ceiling. And following that meeting with Treasury Secretary Geithner, some House Republicans came to the microphones to talk about what they heard from the meeting with Treasury Secretary.
We're going to be very brief. We've got votes going on the floor right now. My name is Austin Scott. I'm president of the freshman class, and then I'll turn it over to, we've got Diane Black, Tim Scott, and Christy Noem, other elected leaders of the class. I just want to thank Secretary Geithner for coming and meeting with us, going through the situation. We obviously have a very serious economic situation that we're in right now, and we're here to solve it. And so as far as we're concerned, everything that we got in there from him is a step in the right direction, that we're having open and honest dialogue and how we move forward.
Yeah, one of the most important things that we heard in the room is that we're looking for an equilibrium, where Republicans and Democrats are willing to work together on a plan that makes sense to both sides, i.e. we don't get what we want, but neither side does. From my perspective, one of the things that we heard that I found to be a bit concerning is any conversation around a plan that includes tax increases in order to make this thing work. I think you lose a lot of the Republicans. Finally, we need the specificity and the details from the other side for us to have a serious conversation about any increase in the debt ceiling. Tim Scott, South Carolina.
Christy Noem from South Dakota. We had a very good conversation. The Secretary reiterated to us that the President does not have a plan that we can score. And that's truly what we want to do, because you can't compare plans if the President doesn't give us one. For me, that's a failure in leadership. I've been waiting for this President to step forward and to lead on this debt ceiling issue. It certainly is something that he asked us to give a clean debt ceiling vote. He did not. We did not pass that off the House floor. We had that vote as well. And then we're going to continue to ask for that. We need his plan. We need to have the American people in this discussion. They have, only 11% of Americans say that they would approve of a clean debt ceiling vote, which is what the President originally asked for. So we really recognize that we have to have reforms, we have to have a plan from this President, and we have to make sure we do the right thing for our country.
And I'm Diane Black from Tennessee, and I want to follow up on what Representative Noem just said. We asked specifically in this meeting, as we asked in the meeting yesterday with the President, for a plan, for a specific plan that could be scored by CBO. The Republicans had put out a plan. It did pass the House. We know specifically what's in that plan, and it has been scored. It's awfully difficult to talk and have a conversation about what we are able to negotiate between the two if there is not a plan. Therefore, I have drafted a letter. A number of my freshman colleagues are willing to sign on to that letter that we will send to the President, and we will ask him specifically in that letter for a plan that can be scored by CBO, and then secondary to that, a plan that if by some chance the debt limit issue is not solved by August the 2nd, what is their next plan on how we handle from that point forward? Thank you.
Can you tell us what you think? Well, first of all, how fast do you think Congress and the White House can come to some sort of agreement on the debt limit? Do you think you can do it by August 2nd? And what do you think the consequences will be if you don't raise the debt ceiling by August 2nd?
Well, that's not up to me to say whether we can get to that point of having a conclusion by then. I would hope we would. This is a very serious issue for the country, and I would hope that we would get to that point. But again, if you don't have a plan, one side has a plan, the other side doesn't have a plan, you can't really talk about what you're going to be able to come to a consensus on.
We have votes. We've got to get to the floor. What I'll tell you about that, ma'am, is that we're perfectly willing to stay here day and night to get the job done.
What did the Secretary say to you?
He was very cordial, very nice.
His reaction on the plan? Okay.
They do not intend to have it. Not a public. Negotiations behind closed doors.
Went back live on the House floor. Members voting on the motion to recommit to the Homeland Security spending bill for fiscal year 2012. 15-minute vote. That meeting with Republicans, House Republican freshmen, and Tim Geithner, the Treasury Secretary, happened late this afternoon. Earlier today, House Speaker John Boehner said in his weekly news conference that Any debt limit increase must be met with spending decreases. He said increasing the debt limit without spending reform sends the message that Congress doesn't want to stop the, quote, spending addiction in Washington. He spoke to reporters for about 10 minutes. He also talks a little bit about Libya, and it was announced late this afternoon that Speaker Boehner has introduced a resolution which will come up for debate tomorrow in the House. Here's that briefing from earlier today.
Morning, everyone. Good morning. You know, it's now been nearly a year since the White House declared the beginning of recovery summer. But all in all, it hasn't been much of a recovery. The American people are still struggling with high energy prices, high food prices. Jobs continue to be scarce. And frankly, the rebound in the economy has failed to materialize. Yesterday, we told the President what many Americans are thinking, that the economy isn't creating enough private sector jobs, and Washington continues to be a big reason why. Listen, this issue has been and continues to be the focus of our majority. And last week, we put forward a job creation plan that builds on our pledge to America, and we asked the President to take a look at it. And this blueprint recognizes that spending, borrowing, and regulating our way to prosperity hasn't worked, and it won't work. That's why I released a statement yesterday signed by more than 150 economists who agree that to help create jobs, any debt limit increase must be met with an even larger spending decrease. Because increasing the debt limit without spending cuts and reforms would send a message to our job creators that we're just not serious about stopping the spending addiction going on here in Washington. Listen, the American people won't stand for it, which is something that you've heard me say since the Obama administration first raised this issue back in January. We've also passed a budget that backs up this position, paying down the debt over time without raising taxes. We actually have a plan that eliminates our budget deficit and pays off our debt over time. So it's no surprise that yesterday our members continue to press the case to the President. Where's your plan, Mr. President? So it's pretty clear to us if we don't act soon and get our fiscal house in order, the markets will act for us. Remember, the warning from Standard & Poor's 6 weeks ago was about Washington's failure to tackle our massive debt, not the debt limit fight. I've said for months, I'm ready, our members are ready, and I think the country is ready. And the time to act is now. And if the White House is truly committed to its own goal and timeline, it should put a real plan on the table so that we can get this done as soon as possible. The talks being led by Vice President Biden, which the majority leader, Mr. Cantor, I think is doing a great job representing us, have been productive. But the fact is we haven't seen enough progress from the White House. And if the White House wants to get this done, it's time for them to step up the plate and get serious about it. We told the President, and I think we've demonstrated to the American people that we're ready to deal with the big challenges that face our country. And I hope the President will join us soon. Questions?
Mr. Speaker, talking about Libya here for just a moment, was there concern by Republicans that this resolution by Congressman Kucinich would have passed had you put it on the floor, which was the original plan? And number two, was there concern that you are mindful of what's going on in Libya, but you didn't want to handcuff the President, and that's why there's consideration of the Turner resolution, which would basically just say we don't approve of what's going on?
We're going to meet with our members this afternoon to talk about Libya, and I think we'll see what our members have to say, but I expect that this issue will be resolved tomorrow.
Mr. Speaker, which of the three resolutions that are sort of about the Kucinich, Turner, Rooney, which one's going to survive when it's all said and done in your view?
We're going to have a conversation with our members today, and we'll see what they have to say about it.
Mr. Speaker, what do you make, what do you make of this
controversy involving Twitter and Congressman Weiner. Do you have concerns of a member serving in this official duties until you
I think
understand
you'll have to
exactly
talk
what
to
happened here?
you'll have to talk to Representative Weiner about that.
The Speaker of the House, the Ethics Committee should look into the matter, since it's a member of Congress and it may not reflect creditably on the House.
I think you'll have to talk to Representative Weiner about his issue.
Mitt Romney is about to announce his bid for presidential contention, and because he was one of the original architects of what now the Republicans call Obamacare, and he now has since changed that position. I'm wondering how you feel.
There's more premises in this question than I'm comfortable answering.
How comfortable are you with him as running for the head of your party, especially since there are now movements like Tea Party that say they're going to stop Romney?
I've got all I can do as Speaker of the House, and my focus really right now is dealing with the giant debt problem that we have and getting Americans back to work. That primary election for president will sort itself out.
Speaker, a debt question. In the DoD authorization bill last week, there was this Mission Force Transfer Enhancement Fund, which was $1 billion, which was killed by amendment, as you know, before the bill passed. But I think about $700 million of it or so was authorized before Congressman Flake's amendment killed that. If appropriators fulfill these authorizations when the DoD appropriates bill comes up, will these be earmarks? Would it violate the earmark ban if things from this fund were appropriated?
The House has made clear in our rules that there will be no earmarks. And we have gone to great lengths to make clear to our members what the rules are and the fact that there will not be earmarks. I don't know the specifics of your outline, but I can tell you that we are not going to do earmarks. We're going to keep our word to the American people.
Mr. Speaker, I wanted to ask you about the cyber attack on Google, and that Google said they think originated from China. Are you aware of any members' accounts that might have been compromised, and do you have any cause to believe that the Chinese government might be behind it?
I'm concerned about the reports that I just heard about. And I am confident that the FBI will be looking at this, but we just don't have the details yet. I'm hopeful that we will soon.
Mr. Speaker, two questions on your decision to hire Paul Clement to defend the Defense of Marriage Act in court. First, are you confident that this contract isn't in violation of the Anti-Deficiency Act? The amount of money to agreed upon to pay Clement seems to have been agreed upon without first being appropriated by Congress. Second, the contract hires Clement for an additional total sum cap of $500,000. Can you assure the U.S. taxpayer that the cost of the hiring Clement won't exceed that amount?
This hiring was approved by the Bipartisan Legal Advisory Group, and I'm confident that it complies with all of the rules of the House. Yes, ma'am.
Just looking at the votes last week on amendments on Afghanistan, there was a lot of bipartisan support for the amendment last week. And looking at this week's resolution on Libya, do you think that those measures are an indication that maybe some members are turning in their support for the U.S. efforts abroad?
Well, I think there's a lot of concern given the budget deficit, given our debt. I think every penny that the Congress spends is getting a lot more scrutiny. In addition to that, there's, as I said several weeks ago, members are a bit weary about the amount of money we've spent in Iraq, in Afghanistan, and that we're spending in Libya. And as a result, really are wondering what's our vital national security interest there. You know, I think I've got a pretty good feel for it. But I really do believe that the President needs to speak out in terms of our mission in Afghanistan, our mission in Iraq, our mission in Libya. And the doubts that our members have, frankly, are reflected. They're reflecting what they're hearing from their constituents. And I think the President has a role to play here. And the President really does need to step up and help the American people understand why these missions are vital to the national security interest of our country.
Speaker, wondering if the reports are that the President will withdraw about 5,000 troops. Do you think that that's an acceptable level? Should he go steeper than that?
Listen, I've been supportive of the President's goals in Afghanistan. I was supportive of the surge in troops in Afghanistan. And I said then, and I'll continue to say, as long as the President is listening to our diplomats and our commanders on the ground, I will support him. I don't know what the correct number should or shouldn't be, but if he continues to work with our diplomats and our generals on the ground, he'll have my support. Thank you all.
Thank you. And on the House floor, they are wrapping up a vote on a motion to recommit to the fiscal year 2012 spending bill for Homeland Security. Final passage is next.
Ayes are 187, the nays are 234. The motion is not adopted. The questions on passage of the bill. Under Clause 10 of Rule 20, the yeas and nays are ordered. Members will conduct their votes by electronic device. This is a 5-minute vote.
The House moves on to final passage